This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
Welcome to She Wasn't Born Yesterday, the pod that fearlessly chats about all things affecting us ladies who are 40 plus fabulous.
Ooh, and the guys who want to know what we think.
Well, them too. I'm Janet Evans, advertising creative.
And I'm Jenny Woodhouse, a semi-retired social worker.
In other words, you're busier than ever. We're J&J and we're super thrilled you're with us for She Wasn't Born Yesterday. Gorgeous. Well, you know, if I had a bunch of ka-ching for all the skin cancers and BCCs I've had cut off, cauterised, creamed, blowtorched, blasted and burnt off my face, hands and body, I would be richer than you are.
Sounds painful to me.
Yeah, well, it was, but better than the option, I guess. But growing up in the 70s in Queensland, all there was at the time was a lick of pink zinc on the nose. She'll be right. Spend all day in the sun. No worries. Actually, my sister passed away from melanoma in 2017. And ever since, I've been absolutely paranoid about skin protection. Even though I know the historical damage from childhood's probably already been done and I'm paying the price ever since, but I'm still, you know, just so conscious of protection in the sun, especially with my incredibly white, pale colouring, you know,
Yes,
and
indeed.
reddish hair.
Yeah, absolutely.
In our last series of She Wasn't Born Yesterday, we were incredibly privileged to chat with the amazing and inspirational Professor Georgina Long, AO, who said to us that even at 40 plus fabulous, it's never too late to protect our skin from the Aussie sun.
Good.
Which is very reassuring. And she was joint medical director of the Melanoma Institute Australia with her colleague, Dr. Richard Scollyer, who's now stepped aside after incredibly tragically being diagnosed with a terminal glioblastoma. I think that's how you say it. Brain tumour.
Yes, okay.
The irony being that, of course, he has one of the most incredible brains in medicine in the world, and he's succumbing to this devastating disease. We know that their revolutionary immunotherapy treatment is saving, literally, thousands of lives of Aussies who were previously given a death sentence from melanoma. And in fact, this treatment has also prolonged Richard's own life.
Okay,
But
thank
our
you.
guest on She Wasn't Born Yesterday is here today almost certainly because of Professor Georgina and her team. She beat stage 4 melanoma in just 97 days and has a very incredible story to tell. So welcome to the very gorgeous Anne Gately,
Welcome, Anne.
advertising professional, author, speaker, and now advocate for melanoma patients. Thanks for joining us on She Wasn't Born Yesterday.
Thank you for having me. Very pleased to be here
Yes.
in more ways than one.
Yes,
that's
indeed.
Well, gorgeous, you've been a beach babe and a sea swimmer from a very early age. Tell us where you grew up and about your love of sun and surf.
Yes, I grew up in Coogee, which is in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. Very fortunate to have grown up here. I'm the baby of the family, so I have 3 older brothers, and I always wanted to do what they did. My mother couldn't get me out of rugby jerseys. We were a swimming family, so when they went off to swimming training and to swimming club and to surf club, I tagged along and got involved. Not in surf club. Back in those days, women weren't allowed in the surf club. So I just grew up on the beach. That was just the natural thing that we did. We would go to the beach a lot and swim a lot. I grew up in a beachside social community, and that's where social life was. That's where we would spend our time. So, you know, in the summer school holidays, we were there from, 9 a.m. to 5 o'clock every day in the summer school holidays. You know, those days, sun protection was zinc on your nose and some sort of oil, Hawaiian Tropic or maybe baby oil. You know, we just spent a lot of time out there at the beach.
I remember growing up at about the same time period with my 3 big brothers as well, and we covered ourselves in coconut oil.
Oh, that smell of coconut oil on the
Yeah.
beach. It smells beautiful. I love that smell, actually.
I know, good memories.
It makes me hungry. But
frizzled to death. And I remember
deep fried.
Peeling off my brother's skin and getting them to peel off my skin when we got sunburnt.
Yes.
Yep.
But, Anne, you were first actually diagnosed with melanoma in 2010. Tell us about that and what the treatment was.
So in 2010, I just decided I needed to go for a skin check. I hadn't been for one for about 13 years. And someone in my kind of extended group of friends I'd heard had a close call. And I thought, I'm pretty moly. Like I had a lot of moles on my back. And I thought I should just go and, get a check. And I wasn't particularly worried. I went along and I went to see a dermatologist actually, and she said, there's this one here on your back I'll just take a biopsy of. And I went, yeah, okay, no worries. And I wasn't worried. I was a bit annoyed because it meant I couldn't swim for 2 weeks because I had stitches in my back. I went back 2 weeks later to get the stitches out and get the results, and she said, it's melanoma. And, I went into shock. I didn't know much about melanoma, only that it could be fatal. So I had surgery to remove the rest of the melanoma from my back, and thankfully for me, it was clear.
Okay.
So that was all the treatment I had, and then what I was required to do was have follow-up skin checks, and they were every 3 months for 5 years. And then after 5 years, the stats say the chances of it coming back is, less. So I was then having 6 monthly skin checks, which I had religiously.
But then in June 2018, which was actually 8 years after the original diagnosis, you were at a pump class at the gym. Which is amazing. I'm not sure what that is, but it sounds impressive.
Okay.
But what happened after that class?
Well, I came home and I had a pain in my back, and I thought, I've done one of my lifts with poor form. That's what I've done. I've just, pulled a muscle or something in my back. So I had paracetamol and anti-inflammatories, and then I had hot packs and cold packs and thought the pain will go away. But actually it didn't go away. It got more intense and then it spread.
Over what time period are you talking?
The first, it just got worse. I let it go for, say, a week or two because I thought, it's a gym injury. Sometimes it takes a while. And then after 2 weeks where I was getting no relief and then the pain had spread, so it spread from my back into other parts of my body, I thought, well, this is a bit weird. So I tried a chiropractor. I don't know why, actually, because I'm more of a physio person over chiropractor, but I went to a chiropractor. They sent me for an X-ray, didn't see anything. I also went to a GP and just went, look, I'm not feeling great. I'm just not, I'm feeling a little bit nauseous. I've got this pain that started as a gym injury. I said, look, could you take some bloods or something? I don't know what I'm asking for, but can you test for something, And, a couple of days later or a day later, get the text back from her, blood's all good. So then getting this pain, which is becoming debilitating, sometimes I recall walking along the street and I had to stop just to concentrate on trying to take a breath without kind of being in too much pain. And sometimes I'd have dull, achy pain. Other times it was like electric shock, what I imagine an electric shock would be going through my body. And getting out of bed every single morning became excruciating. So you know how you probably don't even think about it, but when you get out of bed, you first roll over onto your side and then you push yourself up to sitting, and that just became excruciating. I eventually went to another GP, totally different surgery practice from where I'd been before, and I told her kind of what was going on. I said, I've got this awful pain, and she thought, well, maybe it's an autoimmune disease. So she sent me to an endocrinologist. So at this point, it's maybe 8 weeks since this gym injury. I've got to see this endocrinologist and I can't get in for 2 weeks. And I'm just thinking, oh, my God, I can't keep going like this for another 2 weeks in this pain. Thankfully, I got a cancellation and got in like 2 days later. And I went to see the endocrinologist, and he was the first one to ask me to have a look at where my melanoma scar was on my back. And he looked at it and I thought, that's really weird. And he said, look, I'm going to send you for a bone scan. I went off for the bone scan, and the day I had the bone scan, I actually drove up to a girlfriend of mine who lives on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. And I thought, I won't be hearing from the doctor. He said, I'll contact you in a couple of days. And when I picked up my phone later that night up at her place, there were missed calls and messages from him. And he said, call me back whatever time you get this message. And I called back. I just remember him saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And I thought, oh, my God, what's going on here? You know,
that's not a good sign, is it?
No. And I had to say, I said, look, what are you trying to tell me? And he said, I've seen your bone scan. You have cancer and it's everywhere.
Wow. Oh, my goodness. Wow. Oh, my goodness.
That's a pretty grim thing to hear.
I have goosebumps on me at the moment.
I know, me too.
Imagining that.
Wow. What did you tell everyone? What did you decide to do?
Well, at that point, they didn't know what sort of cancer it was, so I had to have some other tests. And I was told that I had stage 4 melanoma, and I was told that essentially it's incurable, that the treatment I was going to have was just to buy me more time.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's essentially what I told people. I was upfront with people and said, this is what I have. We're just, buying me more time. I'm at the best place in the world. I'm getting, the best treatment. But, this is the situation.
Can I just come back a little bit? I'm thinking that was an awfully long time that you had all of these symptoms. Was it not picked up because the symptoms were unusual?
It is unusual, I'm told, for melanoma to present like that, to go kind of straight to the bone. So I'd been having, as I said, all my skin checks. So what they do is obviously observe your skin and then check your lymph nodes. I probably would have had a skin check at most 4 months prior to, this happening. It is unusual for it to happen like that. The other probably thing that was possibly a complication was that the GP who'd given me the original referral to see the dermatologist that found the initial melanoma, I actually had an insurance claim for trauma insurance with my first melanoma. And when I went to the GP to complete the forms with her, I didn't really like the way that she treated me when I did that. She kind of implied that I didn't really need to be making a claim because I was all fine, and kind of left me with the impression that I was doing something wrong in the system.
Over-dramatising it.
Yeah, or just gaming the system or something, So as a result of that, I stopped seeing that GP.
Right.
Now, had she been my first point of call as a GP, maybe she would have, because she knew that history, maybe it would have been picked up sooner. But when I went to the endocrinologist, who was the one that said, I'm going to send you to a bone scan, he said to me, I don't think it's melanoma because it doesn't normally present like this.
Okay.
So he was the first one that kind of even mentioned it as being a possibility.
Right.
I think it was just unusual.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. You're sort of, talking about this very factually now and all of that, but how on earth were you feeling, and how did your loved ones react, your immediate family?
Yeah, well, it was pretty devastating. There was lots of tears. For me, because I think I'd had the first melanoma, when I got this diagnosis, yes, I was devastated and upset, but I accepted it pretty quickly, and I think that's really a key part in being able to deal with what's going on is accepting it. Whereas the first time around, I struggled to accept that diagnosis. And one of the main reasons was I felt a lot of shame attached to being diagnosed with melanoma, because melanoma is preventable, and, I felt that it was all down to my behaviour. And that was heightened for me because my boys were young. They were 7 and 10 at the time. And I just thought, imagine if I die and I leave my sons when they're 7 and 10. I just felt shame that I could leave such young children behind without a mother, So I guess I felt like I was a bad mother.
Do you think that's fairly common, that sense of shame?
Look, shame's never rational anyhow, So that's how I felt about it. But it isn't uncommon because it's one of those things that, is 95% preventable.
Tell us about the first time or how you came to meet the fabulous Professor Georgina Long.
So I was actually diagnosed as melanoma by a haematologist because after the bone scan, he thought it might be a blood cancer. So he sent me to the haematologist. I had a bone biopsy and I went in to see the haematologist and he said to me, "I'm sorry to tell you it's melanoma. I can't help you because that's not my thing. But if I had what you had, this is the person I would see." He got then onto his mobile phone and called Georgina directly and she answered and he had, 3-minute conversation with her. She said, "Send everything over, tell her that someone will call her today and I'll see her tomorrow."
Wow.
Which was
awesome.
amazing because, it had taken me kind of 10 weeks or whatever to get to this. And every time I had to make an appointment with another specialist, it had taken, 2 weeks or whatever. Firstly, I went, amazing. It's in tomorrow kind of thing. But also it made me realise that, okay, you must be a pretty urgent case,
That's a dead giveaway, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
I went in the next day and I didn't meet with her first. I met with one of her doctors. I don't know what you would call them, registrar or something like that. One of the other doctors first. And he took me through everything. He explained that it was stage 4, the type of treatment I was going to have. He basically took me through all the details. And then Georgina came in to meet me and see me. And she just enters the room with this kind of confidence and quiet kind of presence, and I just felt calm as a result of her presence and knew because the haematologist had already told me basically, she's the one I'd go to. I just felt, I knew I was in the right pair of hands. But you've seen her achievements. She's incredibly busy. So also she doesn't mince words. She doesn't have time to say too much, She just reinforced what I'd already been told and I knew I was in the right hands.
What did she then suggest for you and what did she say about it?
So I'd had the original bone scan, which when I saw the bone scan, I was lit up like a Christmas tree. A bone scan actually is in red and green, so it was literally like a Christmas tree. But the first thing that needed to happen was they needed to get benchmark scans. So I had to have what are called PET scans and then a brain MRI. So they were the things that needed to happen first before I could go on any treatment. That was kind of the plan. She always said to me from the beginning I was going to have immunotherapy and she was going to put me on what she was calling at the time the big guns of immunotherapy. So there are 2 immunotherapy drugs. Please don't ask me to pronounce them or tell you exactly what each of them does.
In the show notes.
But she said because it's in my bones, I'm going to need both of them. There was talk about me going on a trial, which, they were kind of telling me all about and I had to consider that. I don't remember if they talked to me all about that in the first appointment. Like I had quite a few appointments in a short period of time to discuss this path. And then when my PET scan results came back, like the first ones they did for the benchmark, there was lesions on my skull and they were very keen to get me started on some form of treatment immediately to prevent the possibility of me getting lesions, metastases on my brain because historically, having it on your brain is a worse prognosis. So at that point, I didn't have any on my brain and because the trial process, there's a bit of admin up front and it would have taken longer than she desired. I didn't end up going on a trial.
Who did you have around you at this time? Who was were you trying to work and stuff at the same time, or what was your life like at that time?
Okay, so I had been on a contract when I got unwell, and that contract came to a natural end. just when I found out that I had cancer of some form, when I got that call when I was up at the Mid-North Coast. And I was due to start a new contract with a different company the next week. And when I found out that I had cancer, I said, look, I can't work. I can't do this. I'd been in so much pain. I was just tired and I didn't want to go to work for it. It was actually a previous boss of mine. I didn't want to go there and not be able to give 100%. So I just said, I'm not going to start the contract. I kind of didn't know how long I'd be able to work or like financially what I was going to do, but I just knew I couldn't work.
Yeah.
So I stopped working, and I've got 3 brothers. One of them lives in the States now and was then, and so I had my other 2 brothers who supported me. So one of my brothers went to pretty much all of my medical appointments, and at the time I also did have a partner. So they were very supportive going through this as well. And then I had just amazing, friends that were there for me, that because both my parents are long deceased, so my folks weren't around. And I just had, amazing friends that I've had, 2 of them in particular that I've had since I was like 6 years old. And then other people that work colleagues who, just kind of stepped up and, stepped in and were amazingly supportive, which I kind of hadn't expected.
During that time, what were some of the big difficulties? I mean, the whole thing's a big difficulty. But were there any barriers to you getting treatment? Were there any difficulties that you had to get over in order to keep going with treatment?
The biggest thing was finding out what the diagnosis was. Once I had that, and as I said, I was pretty quick to acceptance. I think that was one of the other things, was there was actually kind of relief in that diagnosis, because I thought, right, now I know what it is, let's focus on doing something about it. So from that point of view, I guess I was pretty positive towards, just a plan of working on how to get the best possible outcome. Pain was a huge problem for me. It took a long time to get to a place where the pain was manageable. They put me on, opioids, and so they don't just hand them out willy-nilly. Like, I found it quite difficult to get to a level where, as I said, I could manage the pain. So that was incredibly difficult, and I can't remember how far into the journey I finally was recommended to see a pain specialist. And I went, oh, is that a thing, is it? Like, had I known that was a thing, maybe I would have asked about that earlier. So for me, that was really difficult. I didn't have a proper poo for about 6 months. I went from constipation because of pain medication to diarrhea as a result of one of the side effects.
Oh, the value of a good poo is highly underrated, I reckon. It's one of life's most satisfying things.
We talk about it often, don't we,
Yeah, we
Janet?
talk about a lot of different things.
Yeah. So the plan for my treatment was that I would have 4 infusions of these 2 drugs, and then I would have to have one of them every 2 weeks for like 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And after my second infusion, I'd ended up with a number of toxicities, as they call them. So I had a lot of things related to my nerves. So I had neuropathy, which is like tingling, in your hands and feet. My optic nerves got inflamed. I had a really weird hearing thing, which they tested it, didn't amount to anything. But you ladies might remember the Bionic Woman, the TV show.
Yes.
Well, so it was either her or the Bionic Man, could hear people at a distance,
Yep.
So I was at a shopping centre one day and I thought, I can hear those women over there really clearly.
Talking
I don't
about
think
me.
I should be. Yeah, exactly. I shouldn't be able to hear them. So there was
bizarre.
that.
That's quite interesting, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know whether I made that. I didn't make it up, but there was something weird. They tested my ears. They couldn't find anything happening. And then I got colitis. So with all those things, they put a hold on my treatment.
Oh, okay.
That was really difficult because we normally think of treatment as being, attacking the cancer, for instance.
Yeah.
And I thought, you can't stop the treatment. If you stop this treatment, I've got nothing what are you doing to me? I've got no options anymore. And I knew that I was on the big gun, so I had nowhere else to go. And that mentally was very difficult when I, stopped treatment. But the nurse at the Melanoma Institute said to me, now you've just got to try and keep calm, because the way that the treatment works is that it gets your immune system to do the work. So just because you're not actively having treatment, it doesn't mean that the treatments you've already had haven't already affected your immune system to enable it to kill off the cancer.
So it won't set you backwards, in a sense.
Not necessarily, yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I was going to ask you exactly what immunotherapy is, because I sort of have a vague understanding of it, and I also understand that it doesn't work for everybody. So
Correct,
for you to beat that melanoma stage 4 in 97 days, you obviously had the kind of immune system that responded to those particular drugs incredibly well. Would you say that you are quite a special case?
I think it's around 55% of people with advanced melanoma will respond to immunotherapy. And how they respond, like I don't know how many people would respond like I've responded, for instance. I do know that, that people have responded but are still on treatment, like they're still having treatment every month or, and this is years, maybe 2 years down the track. So I just had 2 treatments and have never had anything ever since.
Wow. That's extraordinary. Was there a point where Professor Georgina, ever came into the room with a big smile on her face and you just thought, I think this might be good news for a change?
Well, the day that I got my results, however, she didn't give me the results because I saw her person that works with her first. So I'd been given the results by the other doctor, and then she came in, and she was quite delighted, And
wow.
In the clinical space, she actually doesn't give that much away, she plays it fairly straight. I do remember, though, saying to her one day when she was telling me the treatment plan initially, and then you're going to have, these 4, and then every 2 weeks you're going to, have another. I said to her, oh, well, that's not going to give me much time for a holiday, is it? Like this. And this is really early on after I, one of my second or third appointments with her. And she just goes, let's just get you through this first 12 months and then we'll talk about a holiday. And that's when I walked away. I thought, right, okay.
Got it. Okay, yes.
All right, I'm in a pretty bad way, I think. So,
Heard and understood. I reckon she was high-fiving outside that door, high-fiving and fist-pumping and everything like that, and then just walked in with a straight face. It's like, I can't give too much away, but I'm actually really excited. Since then, so the 97 days, how did they break the news to you? What did they say about your condition then?
Well, basically they said the treatments worked, and I thought, great. That means in my head, like I'd been preparing that, the melanoma's reduced, and I was hoping that my toxicity levels will have dropped so I could have more treatment, because that was the goal in my head. Going into that meeting was get more treatment. And they said, it's worked. And I went, oh, phew, that's good. They said, you've had a complete metabolic response. And I said, well, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
And they said, you've got no active cancer. Wow. And I went, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, I couldn't get my head around it because, as I said, I'm going in there hoping to have more treatment. And they're saying, well, you've got no active cancer. And they don't say, well, they didn't say remission or it's gone or anything like that. They use no active cancer or no evidence of disease is the other term that they use.
Were you in pain at that point or had the pain gone as well?
I mean, I think at that point I was managing it.
Right.
But I did still have some pain. And I said, well, what do you mean? Like, do I still have cancer but it's just not active? Is that what you mean? Or, like, what does this mean? I don't really recall the answer, like how they responded to me, but they just said, I think it was then Georgina came in and she said, you've had such a great response. You don't need any more treatment at the moment. We'll revisit it in 3 months. You'll have more scans and then we'll talk about it then. So I was just dumbfounded. It took me a while to get my head around it.
How long had it been since they'd stopped the treatment because of your toxicity reaction?
Yeah, about 6 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, so the plan is like you have the treatment every 3 weeks, 4 of them. So that would have been, say, a 12-week, kind of period. And because they stopped mine, I still had the scan at the end of the 12 weeks. Yeah, so obviously my system had been, the immunotherapy had worked to kick my system into gear, and then it just did the work that it needed to.
So what have been the side effects for you, not just physical, but also emotional, ever since then?
So physically, I have 2 of my vertebrae have crush fractures in them. So that basically means kind of the inside of the vertebrae is kind of crushed, so the vertebrae drops a bit. I don't have any issue with any of that physically. I can do whatever I want to. I've been suggested that I don't do anything where I have vertical force down my spine. So
no bungee jumping.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm not going to take up horse riding. I was never very good at skiing anyhow, so I don't do that.
Good. Okay.
But, I lift weights. I do, everything that I want to do physically. The other thing physically I have vitiligo as a result of my treatment. So that's why I look so pale. So vitiligo is where basically your melanin kind of disappears. They don't really know why that happens, but when it does happen, it's generally associated with a very good prognosis. So so we like that. That's why I kind of look so fair, but then you can see there's other parts where I'm browner.
Yes.
So but that does mean that I'm very sensitive to the sun in those white patches because I've got absolutely no natural protection.
Mind you, after all of this, you would be extremely sensitive about the sun level.
Yeah. So that's kind of affected my lifestyle, I guess. So especially in peak periods of UV in the middle of the day, I do think twice about even going outside because I just think, I can't be bothered putting on the long shirt or the sunscreen, to just do whatever. And so if I get an invite to do something, I have to think, okay, well, am I going to be able to protect myself well enough when I go there or do this or whatever? So, I just have to think about that. Emotionally, as I get further away from, that diagnosis of 2018, the anxiety about a recurrence, because the biggest thing is recurrence because melanoma is known for coming back and that's always the concern. So I'm on 6 monthly scans now. So every time I get new scans, firstly, I find actually having the scans, I get quite anxious. I don't like going into those dark tubes. So I've learnt to find ways to prepare myself to be able to cope with those.
I think they need to be showing movies on those tubes, don't they? So you can at least be watching something and distracted.
Right. Well, the thing is with PET scans, they don't want you being stimulated because I think that can alter the results because it sends, whatever. So you can't do it with those ones. Good idea, but yeah. So every time you come around to scans and results, there is always that fear that maybe it's come back. And in between those times, if like you find an unexplained lump or you've got a headache or whatever, it's like, is that to do with melanoma?
Yeah. Is that slight paranoia, but it's worth it?
Yeah.
Well, paranoia is probably not the right word. It's just the amygdala trying to keep you alive by setting off your stress response. I grew up also, lathered in coconut oil on the beach. Is it too late for me now? Is it too late for me to be bothered looking after my skin?
Oh, no, because it's all cumulative. So you should be looking after your skin, You can't reverse the damage that you've done. That's my understanding. I don't think there's any scientific evidence that you can reverse it, but you can make it worse. So you should definitely be, protecting yourself.
Okay. So, Gorgeous, you have written a book called Sunburnt, a memoir of sun, surf and skin cancer, with a foreword by Professor Georgina. So what made you write the book and what does Georgina say?
I wanted to write the book. I don't know, I just had a feeling when I was ill or after I got better, I guess, that I wanted to write a book. And my thoughts were, because it was such a short journey, like 97 days, I thought maybe the story's not about me, it's about the people around me and how they coped, with just this turnaround in 97 days. And I had kind of interviewed a couple of people and I went, no, I don't have a lot of love for that idea. And then I started doing advocacy work. I was asked to speak at a few places and I started speaking in advertising agencies because when I went back to work, I had a creative concept come across my desk, and one of the executions showed a young man sunbaking and it kind of glorified tan. And when I saw that, I thought, oh, my God, I can't approve that and put that out into the world. But I also realised that there was nothing stopping anyone else in advertising and marketing approving that because there are no guidelines or standards, any mention of sunbaking or suntanning in kind of advertising guidelines. So as a result of that, I started telling my story in agencies and saying, how to kind of avoid reinforcing this cultural norm. And I knew then after speaking with people that my story had value, and people would say to me, oh, my God, I'm going to change the way I'm going to protect myself and that kind of thing. I understood my story had value, and then I also then realised that the thing that ever since I got sick in 2018 that I was focusing on was Australia's culture and how we need to bring about cultural change in order to have huge change in this issue. So that's kind of how it came about. I thought, well, I've got a story to tell. I know that when people hear it, it has value. And it's not just my story, it's Australia's story. So I bring in, the story about cultural norms and the ones that affected my sun exposure, which is basically beach culture, which has been created by the media. And sports. I played, apart from swimming, I played a lot of sports. And our sporting organisations allow really poor sun protection behaviours. That's why I did and how it came about. And Georgina talks about, the need for change, and one of the things she wrote about in there, which I wasn't really aware of until I read the foreword, was that she said, that she said that I was one of the sickest patients that she's had. So
really,
so I hadn't, as I said, she doesn't give too much away in consultation. So I kind of suspected I was in a pretty bad way.
But she never gave anything away.
She never actually said that,
So you have to write a book to find it out.
Yes, right.
Yeah, and she also says that she often uses my scans before and afters when she's presenting at conferences or whatever to show the power of immunotherapy.
Yeah.
And she says she gets audible gasps from the audience when they see the difference.
It's good that, you're being held up as an example, but
the insides,
scary.
The insides are being held up as an example. Yeah,
Did I really have to go through that?
Skeletons. Yeah. Could you tell us if you think that the culture that you grew up in to do with not really avoiding the sun and the culture today has changed?
So, this past summer, all over socials was tan lines, the tan line trend. Our children are much better protected, but once they go to high school, there's nothing in the schools that's required, like, no hat, no play is very strong in the junior schools. Once they go into high school, it's not mandatory. So there's that issue. And then social media just provides a whole different issue. So there's research that shows that the more time spent on social media leads to an increased dissatisfaction in skin tone. Some women who watch reality TV shows will actually go through a psychological process where they learn to accept that there's a value in skin tone and then go on to see their own value only in terms of their physicality rather than their personality. So we have different influences, but I think the end result is still the same in that period of time from probably 14 to late 20s. There's still very much this culture of tanning or wanting tanned skin.
Glorifying it.
Yeah. It doesn't look real different when you go down to Coogee Beach these days.
Yeah. I've noticed that too. Like a lot of people slather their little kids with stuff and cover them up. Yeah,
And lie
I think
there
that's
sunbaking themselves.
I guess, yeah.
Yes.
You know, and a lot of international tourists down at Coogee, you see them going bright red in the sun and you're just thinking, obviously in other countries they don't have that sort of awareness either, which is pretty sad.
Yeah.
What they don't realise is that the UV is different here because of our position on the globe, and also we don't have as much pollution above to filter the UV. Our UV, we get something like 10% more UV. That's why people will say, oh, you know, I was in wherever, Europe, and it doesn't feel as strong. The fact is, I mean, you can't feel the UV. That's the issue, that what they're feeling is, you know, heat. But, the UV radiation is stronger here. So we have to adopt different behaviours and protection.
Gorgeous. One thing I want to ask about the front cover of your book, Sunburnt, is almost a replica of that 1960s pic of model Christine Keeler posing nude astride a chair. Now, why did you go with that kind of concept? I know you're in advertising, but, you know.
Well, that photo wasn't taken for the cover of the book. So, as I said,
what you do in your private time is your business.
So, as I said, I've got vitiligo as a result of my treatment, and I met someone else who had vitiligo as a result of melanoma, and she said, oh, I've gone all white. And I thought, I don't know whether I'm going to go all white. So I just wanted to document the vitiligo. And most of my vitiligo is most evident on my arms and my legs. I thought, okay, well, that's just a good shot to be able to hide the things that I need to hide and show off the vitiligo. So my niece, who's a very talented creative, I did a photo session with her and we took a number of different shots and they were beautiful, and I thought at the time, I've got to find something to do with these shots. So when I decided to write the book, I thought, that's one of them needs to go on the cover.
So you wrote a book in order to use a photograph for the cover.
That's the only reason.
Yes.
We're on to you, Anne. And gorgeous, I see a lot about you on social media. You know, you're doing talks here and there and everywhere. How are you actually using this experience to create change?
My hairy, audacious goal is to bring about cultural change, as I kind of, alluded to before. In particular, I think, there's a real need for system change. So, and as I said, in our sporting bodies, I did an audit of 12 of Australia's national sporting teams' websites when I was writing the book. Only 2 of them had a sun protection policy.
Oh, wow.
So that's where I kind of focus my advocacy. That's where I think we need major change. I'm not the type of advocate that's going to have 1 million followers on Instagram and, be posting a whole lot of content and that kind of thing.
You're a slow burn, Anne. A slow burn.
Yeah. I kind of want to influence the influencers. And I don't mean influencers as in Instagram influencers. I mean, as I say, like the institutions. And so that's kind of where I'm trying to focus. I would love to see some incorporation in the advertising code of ethics around tanning and sun exposure. The advertising industry is self-governed and they're the ones that oversee the guidelines. So I would love to see change in that.
Is there anything, do you think, that the Commonwealth government can do? Can they outlaw going out in the sun or, I'm not sure.
There is no federal body for skin cancer prevention or even for skin cancer in general. If you think about skin cancer as a system issue in the same way that road safety is, we have federal road safety organisation. There's one in each state that looks after road safety, and there's a whole lot of research is brought together to drive change in road safety. The same doesn't exist for skin cancer or sun protection. There's the Cancer Council has a state body, and then that's in each state, and then federal Cancer Council, but that's not government. That's a charitable organisation. You have the health departments in different states. And whilst they do collaborate, there's no coordinated federal strategy for addressing skin cancer issue. I think there needs to be more focus federally on skin cancer as as a whole issue, which includes prevention, and research, and the whole lot. Skin cancer will affect 2 in 3 Australians in their lifetime, some form of skin cancer, and more people die each year from skin cancer than die from accidents on our roads.
It's a big issue. Well, gorgeous. Lastly, we've kept you a long time, but now it's dark, so you're free to go out and feel protected. But if us 40-plus fabulous women feel the kind of pain you did after a pump class or any other kind of class, or we notice a freckle or mole that looks a bit strange, what's your best advice for us?
Yeah, the first thing is know the skin you're in. So get familiar with your own skin so that way you can tell if something changes. So if you've got a mole, a freckle, or whatever you want to call it, a spot, may not even be brown. It could be, actually flesh coloured. If there's something on your skin that you notice and it's changed, go to your doctor. That's the simplest thing to do. And, if you've got a partner or whatever, get them to get familiar with your skin, especially your back, because obviously it's hard to keep an eye on your own back.
Exactly.
In terms of pain, I've learnt this subsequently from listening to other podcasts, actually. If you have a pain that wakes you up in the middle of the night, like if you've been asleep and it wakes you up, it's so painful, that is something that should be checked out, which I had that and I didn't do anything about it. I didn't know what I thought it was, but in hindsight now, I had that. And also, if you have pain, apparently I read somewhere or heard somewhere recently that's like an electric shock, get that checked out too, which is something I also had. So,
great advice.
Notice you said that.
Well, gorgeous, thank you so, so much for appearing on She Wasn't Born Yesterday. We're so glad you're still here. We're so grateful to Professor Georgina Long for bringing you to us today. And thank you so much for your time and your wisdom.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having me. Enjoyed it.
And Gorgi, Anne is generously giving away 2 copies of Sunburnt, her book, to lucky listeners of She Wasn't Born Yesterday. Just head to the Hope 1032 win page and you could score yourself a fabulous copy of it.
Hope 1032. Thanks for listening.